Story 1. The Man on the Shoulder. You never really understand fear until you're trapped on a dark highway, miles from the nearest town, with someone watching you from the side of the road. I was driving home from a work trip in Arizona, alone, just past midnight. The only light came from my headlights, cutting through the desert darkness. The radio was off, the road completely empty, and I could hear the faint hum of my tires echoing through the night. About an hour into the drive, I saw a figure standing on the shoulder up ahead, still, motionless. He was facing the road, wearing something like a dirty gray hoodie. I slowed down slightly, thinking maybe he'd broken down or needed help. But as I passed, he didn't move, didn't even look up. I caught a glimpse of his face in my mirror, pale, blank, almost. Wrong. I shook it off, told myself it was probably some hitchhiker or homeless guy. But a few miles later, I swear I saw him again, standing on the opposite side. This time, same posture, same gray hoodie. I blinked, looked again, gone. My stomach tightened. I turned down the music I had barely turned on, trying to listen for anything, any sound besides the engine and the wind. My GPS showed another 45 minutes before the next gas station. Started to feel uneasy, that prickling feeling crawling up my neck. I locked the doors, even though I was going 70 miles an hour. The desert felt endless, like the road was stretching on forever, looping back into itself. Every shadow in my headlights looked human now. Then I saw it, a pair of headlights far behind me, slowly catching up. I hadn't seen another car for almost an hour, so it made my pulse spike. Car gained on me, then stayed at a distance, too close for comfort, but not close enough to pass. It followed me like that for miles. Every time I sped up, so did they. Every time I slowed down, they matched me. I decided to pull into a small rest stop. I spotted ahead just a couple of picnic tables and an old vending machine. I thought maybe if it was a cop or someone following me, they'd just pass once I stopped. I parked, turned off the engine, and watched in my rear view. The headlights slowed down and stopped about 50 yards behind me. They didn't move. I didn't get out of the car. I sat there for maybe 5 minutes, engine off, lights off, staring into the mirror. Then, out of nowhere, the car's lights blinked off. Total darkness. My heart pounded so hard, I could feel it in my throat. I grabbed my phone. No signal. The desert was dead silent, except for the ticking of my cooling engine. Suddenly, I heard something outside, the crunch of gravel. Slow, deliberate footsteps circling toward my driver's side. I froze, trying not to even breathe. A shadow passed across my window. I could see the faint outline of someone crouched near the back of my car. I didn't wait. I slammed the key into the ignition and floored it, tires screaming against the dirt. The car behind me didn't move, not right away. But after maybe 10 seconds of pure panic driving, I saw those headlights again in my mirror. They turned back on and started coming after me fast. I kept my foot down, the speedometer climbing. My hands were slick with sweat, my heart hammering as the road blurred past in streaks of black and yellow. For what felt like forever, they stayed behind me. No horn, no lights flashing, just following. I thought about calling 911, but still no signal. Then, suddenly, the car slowed down. The headlights faded away, shrinking in the mirror until they disappeared. I didn't stop, not until I reached the next town and pulled into a gas station surrounded by light and people. I sat there, shaking, trying to catch my breath. I told the clerk inside what happened, and he gave me this weird look. "Okay," he said, "you must have taken Route 89. People go missing out there all the time. Cops say there's someone who watches that road at night." I didn't believe him until I went to use the restroom and saw something that made my stomach drop. On the side of my car, smeared along the dust near my gas cap, was a handprint, large, muddy, and fresh. But what terrified me most was the streak under it, like someone had tried to open the door. I never took Route 89 again. Story 2. The woman by the gas station. You know that uneasy feeling when you realize you're not supposed to be somewhere? Okay. That's what I felt that night, right before everything went wrong. I was driving through a small town in Nevada on my way to visit my brother. It was around 2:30 a.m. and the highway had been empty for hours. The road was lined with old, broken-down gas stations and flickering neon signs, the kind that make everything look even more deserted than it already is. I'd been running low on gas, so when I saw a half-lit sign that said open 24 hours, I pulled in without thinking. The place looked ancient. One pump, a dusty old building, and a single bulb buzzing above the door. I got out, stretched, and started filling up. Okay? The only sound was the clicking of the pump and the wind moving through the trees. Then I saw her. She was standing across the road, maybe 50 feet away, a woman in a long white dress, barefoot, her hair hanging down like it hadn't been washed in weeks. She wasn't moving, just staring straight at me. My first thought was that maybe she needed help. Okay. But something about her posture felt wrong. Her head tilted slightly, like she was studying me, waiting for me to notice her. I turned away, trying to ignore it, pretending I didn't see. But when I glanced back, she was closer. Maybe 20 feet now, standing on my side of the road. I hadn't even heard her move. I froze, my hand still on the gas handle, my pulse racing. I called out, "Ma'am, are you okay?" She didn't answer, stood there, breathing heavily, her shoulders jerking slightly, like she was shivering, scared. I left the pump running and backed toward my car, scared. My instincts were screaming at me to leave. That's when she spoke in this cracked, whispery voice that barely carried over the wind. He said, "You'd come back." I stopped cold. I had no idea what she meant, but my stomach dropped. I told her I didn't know what she was talking about and got into my car, locking the doors instantly. She started walking toward me slow, dragging steps, her bare feet scraping across the pavement. I slammed the car into reverse and tried to back out fast, but the pump hose was still attached, snapped loose, spilling gas across the ground. I didn't care. Okay. I shifted into drive and peeled out of their tires, screeching on the cracked asphalt. When I glanced into the rearview mirror, she was standing in the middle of the road again, just standing there, watching my taillights disappear. My heart was pounding so hard, I could barely breathe. I drove 4 miles before finally pulling over at a diner that was still open. I went inside, shaking, and told the waiter what happened. He gave me this strange look, like he'd heard it before. Then he said something that chilled me more than anything that night. "You must be stopped at Miller's Gas. That place burned down in 2005 with a woman inside. Some people say they still see her." I laughed nervously, thinking he was messing with me, but he didn't smile. "They say she shows up to drivers who stop alone." I didn't believe him until I went back to my car. My windshield was fogged from the outside, even though it wasn't cold. And right in the center of it, drawn in the condensation, were 3 words. "You came back." I wiped it off with my sleeve, my hands shaking uncontrollably. There was no one else around, no footprints, nothing. I got back on the highway and didn't T-stop until I reached the next town, a full 2 hours away. Even then, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd brought something with me, like someone was still watching from the back seat. That night, I stayed in a cheap motel. I barely slept, but at some point, I must have dozed off because I woke up to a sound, something like slow footsteps outside my window. I peeked through the curtain, and my heart nearly stopped. In the reflection of the motel sign's red light, I saw her again, standing barefoot in the gravel, staring up at my window. I didn't move, didn't breathe. I watched her until the light flickered and she was gone. The next morning, when I checked out, the motel owner asked if I'd parked near the side lot. When I said yes, she frowned and said, "We've had complaints from guests there before about a woman crying near the windows. That was 3 years ago. I've driven that same route since, but I'll never stop for gas at night again, because every time I pass that stretch of highway, I still glance at the side of the road. Sometimes I swear I see her standing there." Story 3. The woman in the restroom. Okay. There is something about long drives at night that makes you feel detached from the world. Like time slows down and you. Okay. The only one left on earth. I was on my way home from visiting a friend in another state. A 7-hour drive through endless stretches of rural highway. Around 2 a.m., exhaustion hit me like a wave, so I pulled into a rest stop, the kind with flickering streetlights and vending machines that Haven Tea worked in years. There were only 2 cars parked there, one old sedan and a dusty van near the restroom building. The air was cool, quiet, and thick, with that eerie emptiness you only feel in the middle of nowhere. I got out, stretched, and walked toward the restroom. The light above the door buzzed weakly, flickering every few seconds. I remember thinking I'd be in and out in a minute. Inside, the restroom smelled faintly of bleach and something else, something metallic, almost like rust. 2 stalls, 1 mirror, 1 sink. The last stall door was closed, but I heard faint breathing. I paused. Maybe someone else was in there, just another traveler. I washed my hands quickly, but the breathing didn't stop. It was steady, and somehow too controlled, too deliberate. I dried my hands and glanced at the mirror. Behind me, I could see the stall door's bottom edge, a pair of shoes, small, white sneakers. Something about how still they were made my skin crawl. I called out quietly, "Hey, you okay in there?" No answer. I waited a few seconds. The breathing continued, low, rhythmic, wrong. I stepped back slowly, thinking maybe I should just leave. But as I reached for the door handle, the breathing stopped. The silence that followed was heavier than anything I've ever felt. Then, very softly, I heard the stall door creak. My reflection in the mirror caught it, a sliver of movement, the door slowly opening, but I didn't turn around. Something deep inside told me not to. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it might crack my ribs. The door stopped halfway open. I could see part of a leg in the reflection, pale, motionless. That's when a whisper came from behind me. It wasn't loud, but it was close enough that I felt the air move on my neck. A woman's voice, hoarse and quiet. "You shouldn't have stopped here." I ran, didn't look back, didn't check to see who or what was there. I sprinted straight to my car, slammed the door, locked it, and started the engine. As my headlights came on, I saw something in the beam, that same pair of white sneakers standing just outside the restroom door, pointed toward me. My stomach flipped. The figure didn't move, just stood there, watching. I hit the gas, gravel spraying behind me. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely keep the car steady. For miles, I kept checking my mirrors, convinced she'd somehow be behind me again, but the road stayed empty. My GPS showed no service, and I drove until I saw a sign for a 24-hour diner. I pulled in, parked under the bright lights, and finally exhaled. Inside the diner, I told the waitress what had happened. She froze mid-step when I described the rest stop. "You mean the one off Highway 50? She asked. I nodded. Her expression darkened. "That place was shut down months ago. A woman was found there, murdered. He never caught who did it." My mouth went dry. I told her I'd just been there, that there were lights, cars, everything. The waitress shook her head slowly. "Honey, there's no power there anymore. Hasn't been for weeks." I wanted to argue, but the look on her face said it all. She called the police anyway, just in case. They told me to stay put until they checked it out. They returned an hour later. Their faces told me everything before they said a word. "There's nothing there," the officer said. "No cars, no lights. The place is empty." But, he paused, looking uneasy. There was something written on the restroom mirror, looked fresh. He showed me a photo on his phone, the words scrawled in something dark across the cracked glass. "You shouldn't have stopped here." I left the diner at sunrise, shaken and silent. The highway looked different in daylight, smaller, less threatening, almost harmless. but I can still hear that voice sometimes when I drive alone at night. And every once in a while, when I stop at a rest area, I see a pair of white sneakers sitting in the corner, perfectly still.